It's the November 2025 show with MPP Bobbi and Brady for Hullum, Norfolk. Haven't talked in a while. How you keeping?
I'm pretty good. AJ's here too.
AJ, oh, sorry.
At,
Yes, a
at
special
some
guest appearance.
at some point, it's going to be AJ's last podcast, so we better let him.
Yeah,
We better let him join while we can.
he's having his
Hey, AJ.
15 minutes, isn't he? He's for
Yeah.
sure. Um, AJ, today I want to talk about Bill 33. Are you up for it, buddy? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pissing me off, and I need Bobby to explain this to me so I can sort of wrap my head around it. Because I read your article on it, the November 6th piece on your website, and
Yeah.
why do I get so frustrated? When I think the number you threw out was 6.4 billion
6.4
underfunded
billion.
for our
Yeah.
education system. Okay.
Yeah. And it's because the government has not kept up with inflation with respect to per student funding. So that's an important thing, right? We all have to keep up with inflation in our daily lives, whether we want to or not. And yet the government refuses to do that. And what really, you're not wrong in being frustrated, Dave, because oh my goodness, as I stood and I talked about it and I, debated this bill, it was so frustrating for the minister to come back and try to turn it back on me about our school board trustees from the Brant Holden Norfolk Catholic District School Board who went to Italy. I should have said to him, I should have said, what bill are we here to debate this morning? Are we here to debate the bill that gets rid of the trustee from Caledonia, or are we here to debate Bill 33? And he did the same thing to Terence Kernahan from the NDP, who represents London, I think London Fanshawe. And he did the same thing there. And people are not stupid. People watching that are not stupid. They're going like, this guy's talking about something completely different and completely disingenuous when he said, well, if she doesn't support Bill 33, then she's obviously okay with trustees going off and spending money. They're two different bills. But he's hoping that people watching are not following along carefully enough and that they're going to perceive him as the being the guy who cleans up school board trustees. So let me tell you, I got pretty heated in that debate.
He's creating a distraction.
100%. That's all they do. Yep.
So it goes back to, but like the meat and potatoes of Bill 33? It doesn't seem to really do anything to be. I mean, they're talking about improving oversight, transparency, overall effectiveness of the system, but I don't see anything. It's the same fluff, right?
So
There's
nobody
no
will
content.
argue. Nobody will argue accountability and transparency, but the bill actually doesn't do that. All it
Right.
does is go after low hanging fruit, which is the school board trustees. And it's funny, a few weeks before he brought forward that bill, I actually called it out in one of my newspaper columns. Like I said, one day it's going to be the school board trustee, the next day it'll be the town councillor.
Yeah.
This is all about centralization of power. There is one good thing I think in Bill 33, but it's buried, and I can't vote for the bill in its entirety or vote in favor of it because of this one good thing. But they did this as a hook, so it's merit based
Okay.
uh, the aspect of merit based exception and things like that, and I agree with that. I think that the best student should be able to get the position. I think the best in the workplace, the same thing. If you and I apply for a job, Dave, and you are the best applicant, then you should get the job, right? So that is within the bill, but nobody's talking about that because of all the other things. And that should just be in my opinion, that should just be a given anyway. Just like this is this is allegedly a fiscally conservative government. So why are we continuing to talk about reining monies in? You know what? As a conservative government, go rein in those school boards that are not spending money wisely and use Bill 33 to actually improve our classrooms. But that's not what they're doing. They are not improving our classrooms one bit with Bill 33.
I think too, when you start looking at the classrooms themselves and just the oversized classes that you're reading about, the kids with special needs in those classes that aren't having any one-on-one at all, and a
Yeah.
teacher's being left there to struggle with what, the component that they have to teach, they're not even getting to it because there's so many distractions within that classroom, but we're not actually doing anything to help them. by the looks of this bill.
So that was my question. I actually stood and asked a question last Wednesday after I had debated Bill 33, and I talked about that. Not one student really in this province, not one set of students is thriving. So you have your academics who, yeah, they are self-starters and everything else. They may be able to cope, but from what I hear, they're not thriving. And then you have the kids with developmental disabilities, the kids with autism who are who are also not thriving. The system isn't working for anyone. And so I called on the premier, but it ended up being the Minister of Education who answered my questions. And I said, we have to reimagine the entire system. I speak to teachers all the time who tell me that they have calendars and they're all counting down to the day of retirement. I have teachers, EAs or teachers who have landed up in the hospital because they've been bit or they've been hit. Um, Classrooms are in chaos, and it's not the kids' fault. It's the system's fault. Reimagine the system. I've talked to the Ontario Autism Coalition about this, and I've talked to a lot of parents about this. I honestly believe that we need regional standalone schools for some of those students who require, the one-on-one or require a classroom that is dedicated to them and their needs. And I know that that's been kind of a tough go for years where people have said, no, we want to see integration. But integration is not working for every single student. And what that's doing is it's creating anxiety for the student who needs those extra supports. And it's also creating anxiety for the student who is there to learn and, be in the classroom. So we have to reimagine the system.
I agree. There's different points to that too that I want to sort of tackle, because I think the inclusiveness, we have to figure out a way to include that somehow, because I think that's the part where we start to separate again. And I do understand your point, because yes, I think in every classroom, there's kids with different abilities at different levels of learning. And there's kids that cause the distractions as well. There's kids that, but when you put that ratio needs to be spread out more. So maybe the class size needs to be smaller. Maybe the whole class is 8 people and there may be 1 or 2 kids with special needs. Maybe that's where you expand it and go the other way, because then you still have all those kids being integrated into a system that works. Because on the other side of this, you go to any third world country and the kids in those schools help the younger kids with learning disabilities. They don't have the programs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other part where we're losing this culture where we actually give a shit about the other person in our classroom and trying to help them along.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we lose sight of too is the level of disability today. I feel is greater than what you and I experienced in the classroom. And the Old Norfolk Board of Education, I think, had these regional schools, because I remember kids being picked up in a navy blue station wagon and taken to a different school. I think we have to look at the different levels of support needed and determine, okay, do we leave, Susie, Harry, and Henry in the school, but for half a day they spend it with like a resource teacher? That's what happened when I was in school. They spent time with a resource teacher, but then they spent the rest of the time in the regular classroom. And I think it has to be a graduation type process where you may have, if you provided all the necessary supports from SK to grade 3, and all of a sudden in grade 3 a child is showing that, hey, look, you know what, they can be integrated into the regular classroom without creating that anxiety in that child, then of course we would integrate them, right? But I think it's got to be a graduation process. The level of violence in our classrooms right now is, I don't think people quite understand the level of violence that we are witnessing in our classrooms right now. And it's sad for every single student involved. It's sad for every single family involved.
I'm going to throw, like usual, my 2 cents in here and say, you're right. You've nailed it on that point. But I want to take it one step further. If we're going to do this, if we're going to break down the whole system, those kids should have been identified at 3 years old. not at 6, because that's where the problem is right now. We
Yeah.
have unbelievable daycares all over the community with no supports to help those kids that are in that early stages before they could be identified, like, they could be, I don't want to use the word identify, but it could be sorted out what problems were there to make sure that transition to the school, when all of a sudden this kindergarten teacher's sitting there with 28 kids, right? And
Yeah.
she doesn't know what the heck's going on. Like, she can't control the classroom.
No.
But if we actually started that way back when, and we're starting to bring those kids through, we're identifying them much earlier, and those kids are given a shot, a
Yes.
chance to actually be in the regular classroom, because maybe we identify they can't sit in a room where there's really crappy lighting that distracts everything. Like, it's those things that we're not doing. That
Well,
bugs me.
and there's a bottleneck in like the autism sector, right?
Sure.
So we've
You
got
point that out.
65,000 children on the wait list now. That has grown significantly since Doug Ford became premier, and he promised to clean
I
that up.
remember that.
But I
Yeah.
believe that the bottleneck is very purposeful, because the longer you wait to identify, then the shorter period you have to actually pay for the supports for those kids.
But we're paying at the other end.
Yeah,
We're
we are.
paying big money at the
Abs
other end.
Absolutely, but they don't realize that. It's just like investing in other things that keep people out of the ER or keep them out of the doctor's office. We're not investing in those things. And I always say to folks who come to me, and I think I said it to the Ontario Autism Coalition a few weeks ago, when people come to the finance committee, I always say to them, when I was on, and I've just started back on finance, but when I was on it in 2022, 2023, I said to people, don't tell me what it's actually going to cost the taxpayer if we do this. Tell me what it's going to cost the taxpayer if we don't. Work
Good.
it the reverse, right? Because there are things that we could be doing to keep people out of hospital, keep them out of doctors' offices, but we don't invest in those things. There's things that we could be doing for families so that we don't see this level of violence in the schools, but we're not doing it. And it's all very purposeful because the government doesn't want to pay for it upfront. But you're exactly right. We're paying for it at the other end.
And let's look at the working poor then, that are in that category where their kids are going off to school. They don't have the resources to get, to help them,
Mhm.
figure out what the problems are to get to the right level, because they can barely afford food right now. Like,
That's
this is the other part of this whole scenario. Like, when you look at it from a provincial standpoint, you've got to help the families first. Like, what the hell are we doing not helping the families
No,
first?
and things are only getting worse. I mean, food bank
Yeah.
usage is on a steep uphill rise, and I wrote about this last year about this time, and it was, we are even in worse shape than we were last year, and last year the numbers were just absolutely horrific. So we have got some really big problems in this province, and one of the things, I know everybody's upset about Donald Trump, but I have told Doug Ford in the Ontario legislature, and I've told, cabinet ministers, why aren't we just focusing on what we can control within our province? Why are we so obsessed and preoccupied with a guy that we can't control? So there are so many things that we could be doing here to make life more affordable. And there's things that we could be doing in this province to tariff proof Ontario, but all we do is yell and scream about Donald Trump, next door. And it
It's
really,
called
really
clicks.
makes
It's called clicks, right?
Mhm.
It's not about what you can do to fix it. It's like, oh, look at me.
Right. And
That
yeah,
kind of bugs me too.
you've got two guys who are fighting for, who's going to be the best drama king. Like you know, I, uh, it's so frustrating when you get the calls that, people are really struggling. And that's one of the things that I said last week in the house too. I said, like, none of you in this house, none of my colleagues can say that this is new to them. You are all getting these same calls. Every family in this province is struggling in one way or another. And, you can't deny that what I am saying is inaccurate. So
And I think too, the role of the government, I think that's something we got to do a show on that, because I don't think people really understand what the actual role of the government is. You know what
no,
I mean?
can I just pop in something? You know, a little
Sure.
bit off topic, but I just want to say that the role of the MPP is not to monitor social media. I had a nice gentleman a few weeks ago who thought I should be on social media being the social justice police officer, and that's not my role. I see a lot of bad behavior, and he pointed out that some of these people support me. Listen, I had 34,000 people vote for me. I don't know who all voted for me, and I certainly can't control their behavior on social media. And it's not my job to go out there and tell people how to act on social media. So, I said to this gentleman, what I do is I try to set the example when I'm in the community. I treat people with kindness, I treat them with respect. I don't care if you voted for me. I'm going to be kind and respectful to you as long as you're kind and respectful to me. And so, the role of government is not to, I just want to say, I just wanted to put that out there because I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have time to be trolling these community sites where people are saying nasty things. That's not my job. But we should do a show on the role of government, because there's a lot of people in our community who could also use kind of that civics lesson on where do
Yeah.
you go when you need help with A, B, or C. We're not Canada 411. We don't look up phone numbers, or sometimes my office does, but it's amazing what people do do think their government should be doing. And when they're preoccupied with things like, well, I'm going to get the MPP to get me fare tickets, or I'm going to get them to look up phone numbers or whatever, they're not paying attention to the big picture items that are actually, hurting them every single day.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's just so much thing. Do you want to spend a minute on Bill 9 then, or do you want to, what's your thoughts today? Do you have time for a Bill 9 discussion?
I'm sure. What are your burning questions on Bill 9?
I don't think people understand it at all. When
Uh,
I started to read it, I was like, okay, I understand this, but what would the average person in Holland, Norfolk take from this? Or why would they not? Would they understand it? And I didn't feel that was what was going to happen there. So I thought I would give you an opportunity to sort of say, here's what Bill 9 is, here's what it means.
yeah, so wow, there's a lot to
I
unpack on
know to
this one.
unpack, but that's the point of it. It's one of those things that you're like, damn.
Again, it's all delivered, or it's all put out there for the public to perceive that. So I guess it's under the guise of increasing accountability, transparency, and everything else at
Again,
the municipal level, and it does nothing. Um, One of the key pillars of this legislation, and keep in mind that prior to the House coming back, the Heritage Committee at Queen's Park heard from countless councillors, mayors who showed up at committee to testify, saying, like, you can't do this. This is terrible. And one of the key components is that it would allow for a council to vote another member of council off. That is so undemocratic. The only if you and I are sitting on council and I have a problem with you, I should not be able to vote you off. And there's just all this kind of ambiguous language out there. Egregious, like, well, what constitutes egregious, right? um so I should not be able to vote you off council, and this is what could happen. And we see one of our councils has voting blocks. The Haldeman County Council has a voting block of 4. They vote together, and so they decide that one of the 3 that they don't like on council, that there's now an integrity commissioner report brought against them, and the integrity commissioner comes back and says, well, now you guys make the decision. Guess what's going to happen, right?
does that
And they're
does it
going to.
have to be unanimous though? Doesn't everybody have to vote
No, I think as
for
long
it?
as it's a majority.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't have.
But you're elected by the people. That's not right.
That's right. So your day of justice kind of thing comes at the ballot box, or you decide not to run again, right? Like, you can't. It would be like you and I working at Walmart together, and we're both sale on the floor customer service reps, and I don't like you, so I just fire you. That doesn't happen in the real world, right? Like, you can't just have people on the same level getting rid of each other. So that's one of the biggest things. And I said, like, look, you could have a vindictive local government who doesn't like the way things are unfolding in a municipality and decides that they're going to get rid of some people around the table. That is really, really scary. And people say to me, why would they do this? Why would they do this? Well, because it's just like getting rid of school board trustees. Nobody really knows what they have until it's gone. And I'll go back to the school board trustee thing. Is we have been led down a path to a predetermined solution or a predetermined outcome that we wouldn't normally otherwise come to. So my daughter said, she said this a few weeks ago. She goes, well, trustees don't do anything anymore. You know why they don't do anything anymore? Because government has stripped them of their roles. They're no longer allowed to go into schools. I'm going to throw something out here. When I was in school, I knew who our school board trustees. Hell, I even knew who the Catholic school board trustee was for St. Francis and Di. Cliff Casey. Everybody knew Cliff Casey, right? Because Cliff Casey was in the schools. When there was a problem, school board trustees came into the school. They talked to families. They solved the issue. And I will say too, I said this in my Bill 9 speech when I was debating this. I said, who is it that has saved Young Canada Day at the Norfolk County Fair several times when Brantford came and said, you know what? You kids in Norfolk County, you're no longer going to participate in this day. We're not going to give you the day off of school. Who was it that saved it? It was our local school board trustees. It wasn't some bureaucrat in Toronto. It wasn't some bureaucrat sitting at the school board. It was our local school board trustees. But the government has stripped them of their role, and it's all very purposeful. They're doing the exact same thing to counselors. And I have had counselors say to me, look, you know what? I don't really understand my role because I think a customer service rep added at the county level could actually replace me. Right. Because you're being stripped of your role. You are no longer a local representative. Let's look at some of the votes that have transpired around council tables. The MZO vote, for example, you have the voting bloc, 4 of them, who continue to go against the wishes of their constituents. That's no longer a representative. That's a political decision. And I don't like to be called a politician. I like to be called a representative. Because even if people tell me, hey, Bobbi Ann, this is what we want, and I disagree with that, if the majority says this is what we want, I'm your representative. I'm going to take forward the voice of the majority. And we're getting rid of that. So Bill 9, Bill 33, it's all about centralized decision making. And you see that with the introduction of strong mayor powers. So you have strong mayor powers introduced. Now you have Bill 9. It's a slippery slope to eroding democracy even more, Dave.
When you have a staff member in Toronto or let's say Norfolk County or Haldimand County, they have human resources to protect them so that if there's something brought against them, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you can't fire anybody anymore without, you need to do the due cause, the whole purpose. But still, even then, there's no assurances. But with a counselor or with a representative or a school board trustee, do they have those in place for them or no?
So I wrote about that actually. And so you look at folks within the municipal system, the bureaucrats of the municipal system. You look at, say, a policing association, a nursing association, teachers unions. They all have people who back them if they do something wrong. And sometimes people do something wrong because they simply don't know. And so a municipal councilor or a municipal mayor, they don't have anyone. There's nobody who says, hey, we've got your back on this, like, boom, integrity commissioner process starts and away you go. And the training. So when you're sitting around the table as a municipal councilor or a school board trustee, most times, this is the most money this counselor or trustee has ever seen in their life. They're dealing with big pockets of money. There needs to be some training on how they do their job. I can tell you for certain, there is very little training on how I do my job. Here's your keys to your office. This is how you hire staff. Away you go. You got to figure it out. We are not training people to actually look at these issues and understand the ramifications of spending X number of dollars, right? So there needs to be more training. There needs to be some protection of these folks. These integrity commissioner reports, my God, all they are doing is gouging the taxpayer. You have integrity commissioners across this province who have 17, 18 municipalities as clients. You know what that means? The more integrity commissioner reports to write, the more money that gets put in their pocket. And don't kid yourself. Some of these integrity commissioners, they are creating reports in favor of the voting bloc on council. You know why? Because that's how their contract gets renewed.
It's all about the money.
All about the money, all about
And
centralized decision making. And I will speak out against the integrity commissioner process every single day of the week. I was looped into one early
recently,
this fall. Absolutely ridiculous. I refused to waste taxpayer money and sit down with a guy who was going to bill the taxpayer for a minimum, 2, 3, 6 hours, and then write into a report that I was not cooperative. Well, of course I would be seen as not cooperative because I had nothing to do with the file. It was all because somebody was upset they didn't get an election outcome that they wanted. And I will speak out against this process time and time again because it is gouging the taxpayer. It is vindictive. And on the other side of things, we have integrity commissioner reports against councillors. There's a councillor in London who has just asked questions around the council table, asking questions about accountability, how money is being spent, and then staff goes to the integrity commissioner and says, "Oh, that councillor is harassing me." No, she's doing her job. Now you do yours. There's nothing harassing about asking for numbers, asking for data, asking for transparency. It is a disaster. And if the government wanted to do something in Bill 9 that was helpful, they would have addressed the integrity commissioner process, and they would have made it, they would have said, the integrity commissioner of Ontario is now in charge of doing A, B, and C so that you don't have it at the local level where people can be vindictive.
when you mentioned earlier too about the trustees, and this kind of ties to all this. Back in the day, like you said, you knew, but I think the difference was, and you mentioned this, they would solve the problems. We talk to the families. That's the part that's gone away.
Yep.
That's the part that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the part that actually would save you money and all these other things. And council should be the same way. I'm always like, with all this integrity stuff, I agree that you need to be accountable, but I also thought that's what council always did to itself.
That's right.
It was self-regulating. That's
Right.
what I thought it was supposed to be. Maybe
100%.
I'm way off base.
And if you and I are sitting at the council table, come on, we're adults. If you were offended by something I said, and it happened, I used to cover Delhi Council all the time, and it was the most, back in before 1999, 1996, 97, and people said things that were, perhaps perceived as inflammatory against someone else. And you know what they did, Dave? They came back and they said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. They were adults about it. You didn't go running off and make a complaint and spend $20,000 having an integrity commissioner come in and for nana boo boo stuff. Like, come on, we're adults. Sit around the table, act like adults. Of course, feelings are going to be hurt once in a while. That's part of life. Get over it and move on. Say you're sorry, accept the apology, and start working for the taxpayer. All of this stuff with integrity commissioners and this nana boo boo stuff, all it's doing is slowing the process for the taxpayer.
Is it ego driven?
It's politically driven. It's not
Okay.
ego driven, it's politically driven. You have folks sitting on councils who represent different political parties. I can point right down the road to Halton County, where you have an executive member who never ever belonged to the PC party when I ran it, and sitting on council, and right in open council says we can't have 4 more years of Bobbi and Brady. And it's political.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, he's upset that his candidate that he worked for lost the election, and he's now taking that to the municipal table. That is wrong. He is voting to keep me away from things like AMO last year.
Right.
That is terrible for the
Vindictive. It's
taxpayer.
just vindictive. Yeah.
Extremely vindictive. And I will speak out against it. I will speak openly and honestly about it. And I don't care who wants to say that, my integrity was destroyed because I got looped into an integrity commissioner process. Then you weren't much of a supporter of mine if you believe what these guys have actually done. It's vindictive, it's childish, it's unprofessional, and it's messing things up for the taxpayer. And I'll speak out against it all the time.
A lot of things
I'm
I
all
see
fired up
too.
now.
Yeah, a lot of things I see is people are actually now intimidated enough not to say what they're thinking. You know what I mean? It's
Oh,
like,
so
oh, don't say what you think.
I
Like,
am
and I mean that in a political sense. If they have a different idea of how something should work, and I'm not to be vindictive, I don't want that part of it. But what I'm saying is, I'll say to someone, that was a great idea. You should let somebody know about that. Well, I don't
no, no,
know.
they're
That might
afraid.
be too much, right? That might
They're
rock the
afraid.
boat.
No, and
Yeah, they're afraid. They're afraid.
I'm glad you bring that up. Actually, two things. Hopefully, I remember the second by the time I finish the first. So, but the first is that I got a call with respect to this integrity commissioner stuff. Within a few weeks, I had multiple calls from across this province who did not realize I had been looped into an integrity commissioner process, but for some reason they look at Bobbi Ann as the person who is going to actually speak out, right? And I got these calls, and I got a call from a mayor who was crying, who said, I have been exhausted mentally and financially. And there's somebody a constituent of mine, and I hope he listens to this, who said, "Oh, that's not true. Their expenses." Excuse me, if they are found not guilty through an integrity commissioner report, their expenses are paid. That's not entirely true. This mayor, I looped back with this mayor who said this, and this mayor, the integrity commissioner ruled in this mayor's favor. This mayor did not know to file the proper paperwork in the first place, and this mayor is on the hook for several $1,000s worth of lawyer fees. So this idea that it's all paid for is not true. Anyway, the point of this is that this mayor now says to me, I am so terrified of another integrity commissioner report against me that I go to council and I am paralyzed by fear. I don't do anything and I don't say anything. Wow. What a disservice for the taxpayer when your mayor is now afraid to do anything around the table. Right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's
And yeah, and now see, I forget what the second thing
it
was.
just it, and that's what you don't. That's the last thing democracy needs.
Mm-hmm.
We need to actually be able to say freely what we
Right.
think. It doesn't necessarily have to be right. It may not be the same opinion you have, but at least I'm saying, hey, have you considered this? And that's not happening, obviously.
Right.
Then.
And then I know what I was going to say about the paralyzed by fear. So, my question to the Minister of Education last week that was aimed at the Premier, came from some conversations with parents about what was happening in our classrooms. Report of a male in a local school using the female bathroom, things like that. And I said, listen, here's the thing I have no problem talking about this, but here's what I don't want you to do. When I post this and people come after me, you better not hide behind the sofa. You better have my back. Right? We can't complain about things and then hide behind the sofa.
Well, but that's what people do. That's what
right.
they do.
But we can't do that. That's why we are in
but
the position
that's why we're
we are
here. Yeah.
in, Dave. Because people go,
I'm not arguing it. I'm just saying that's what people do now. It's like, I want you to solve it. I'm not going to. I'm telling you why I don't like this. So you solve it. That's we're all doing it. We're all guilty of it at some
we're all
point.
guilty of it. Yeah. Except me.
But I think the other part of it is you need to actually, and I think because of the changes, like you said, with Bill 9 and Bill 33 are so quickly. And so, again, you're not educated on it as everyday people. You don't really understand what the heck all this is. Yeah. That's causing all this commotion too, where people are overwhelmed and they don't know how to they can't get back to their basic values that they believe. My values and your values are totally different. But if we can have that streamlined so that we both understand and respect each other, then it will work. And we've lost that. It's just, I'm ranting. See what you've done? Come on.
No, hey, good news okay, first of all, I'm going to have to wear a hat today. people
Yes, she
are
will.
not recognizing me because my hair is darker. And so I'm going to go back blonde at some point, and I'm going to get rid of these awful bangs. So I have to wear a hat to the cenotaph today because this hair is just crazy. Um, that's not what I wanted to say, though. I wanted to
Okay.
say that last month, um, Alex Marland, I've talked about Alex
Yeah.
Marland on the
Yeah.
show a lot, professor and academic from
East
or
Coast.
author from Nova Scotia, Wolfville, Nova Scotia. His book came out, No I in Team, and he waited to finish that book until after he saw the results of Haldeman Norfolk's election in the provincial election in February. So there is a part about us in No I in Team, and at some point I'm going to have some copies to give out. So if anyone has any interesting ways that we could actually distribute some of these books to some winners, I don't know, some sort of contest, maybe we could do it on this podcast. It would be
Why don't we put them in schools,
right? Yeah, I
right?
think
Let the kids. That's
yeah,
the next generation. We need to get them ready.
yeah. I kudos to the next generation. I tell you, the number of kids uh, who come up to me. I had one on Sunday at the Teeterville Legion, who a girl from Waterford. Her dad brought her up to me and he says she really wants to meet you. She may have been 15, 16. The number of young people who are engaged is I've never seen it like this. When I worked for Toby, young people never stopped by the fair booth. They never came up to us at events. They are engaged and somebody's doing something right, whether it's parents around kitchen tables, whether it's teachers in classrooms talking civics. Something's right, and it gives me a little bit of hope for the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I see that
there's
too,
the
and it's
positive
important.
today, Dave.
Yeah, I mean that's we gotta. Yeah, you gotta hope. Without
if
hope, there's
if we
nothing.
talk long enough, we'll find something good.
Yeah, that's true. And now we're done. Just we just went through, ripped apart. We tried to rip apart Bill 9 and Bill 33 because I thought that those were important topics today. And I know you got to get going. You're a busy, busy person. We have to talk in December before Christmas. Get out a season's greetings to everybody, and maybe we'll just
Absolutely.
review. We'll do a
And I'm
little
going.
review of the year.
I,
We'll see.
I'm
We'll see.
going. I'm going to Chicago in December.
Oh, okay.
Council of State Governments. Listeners may remember last year I was in New Orleans. I do not like New Orleans. But the year before I was in North Carolina, and that was a great convention. And then I'm due also to go back to New Orleans at the beginning of January for the State Agricultural Rural Leaders Summit. And I was in Iowa last January for the State Agricultural Rural Leaders Summit, SARL for short. And it was probably the best convention I had ever been at in my entire life. So, as much as I don't like New Orleans, I am looking forward to the discussion on agriculture and tariffs and everything else
Yeah.
happening across this crazy North America right now. So,
Be interesting to see what those farmers have to say, right? What they're
absolutely.
hearing,
Yep,
because there's a big struggle in the U.S. with
that's
farming
right.
right now, and
Yep.
it's
Yeah,
boy,
everything is not all rosy for the farmers in the US.
no, it is
Just
not,
like it's not
unfortunately.
rosy for us here. But I keep saying that one of the things that we could do to tariff proof Ontario is to start investing more in food processing. We are sending pork, we're sending beef across the border, our meat, and then we're paying to bring it back into Canada. Let's
Yeah,
stop that.
there's got to be a way. All right, thanks for
Oh,
doing
and
this.
next time
Oh, wait,
we should talk about Mike Schreiner and I's Farm Belt built again. We are gaining support right across the province. We've been to a few different municipalities who have brought forward resolutions, and most unanimously, I think all who have unanimously supported our bill. So that bodes well for
yeah.
when we go and we debate that again in the new year. So very
Well,
exciting stuff
that'd
on
be
that.
great for the Christmas show because that's
Yeah,
something positive too that we can
that's
sort of
right.
discuss.
Yep.
All right, well, have a great day and
Yeah, you too.
stay out of trouble. It's always fun, and I'll talk to you in December. And yeah, get a next month. Let's try and plug that book too.
Yes, hopefully I'll have a copy to hold up. I was hoping I
Yeah.
would have already, but mail is slow. So
We can't go there today.
the pigeon dropped it as it was carrying
Yeah.
it from
And
Nova
you can probably
Scotia.
get it on Amazon. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
probably pick it up on Amazon.
Well,
All
I'm
right.
waiting for my signed copy from Alex.
There you go. Take
Yeah.
care.
All
Talk
right.
to you soon.
Same. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.